Welcome to another episode of Toot Your Own Horn, Music Matters. Today I'm here with the wonderful Wes Miller. Hello, Wes.
Hello. How are you, Lisa?
I'm great. I am so happy to have you here today to share your story and to tell us about your journey with music. So, where did it begin?
I'm 59 years old. I'm a professional saxophone player, and I started in fifth grade. I went to a little elementary school in Kentucky, way out in the country. It's called None Such Elementary. It's a beautiful old building, but it's now a world-class antique mall, believe it or not.
Wow.
So my school isn't there any longer, but my little band had about 5 kids in it, and that's where I started saxophone, and just moved on as everyone does through what was called junior high then, not middle school, and then through high school. And in high school, I sort of had my big break, as it were. I made it into the all-state band in Kentucky, and my playing just really exploded after that, and things sort of clarified for me in terms of what I was going to probably do for a living. Um, I did what everybody else does as a major in music school: the jazz band, the concert band, wind ensemble, all of that stuff. The only change I made to my degree was I switched from education to performance. Um, I just decided I maybe didn't want to be a band director.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting move, though. Let me just backtrack for just a second. I just want to go back. So, really, like many other people on our little program that we've talked about this before, our podcast, is that you had the same thing. When you got to high school, you got into an activity that put you in the center or the spotlight and showed that you were excelling. And that is what made you think this was a special career path for you, is what it sounds like. Is that true?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that just one event can cause that to happen, even though I bet you have many skills. Like, what else were you good at in school?
Well, Lisa, we should probably just stick to music.
Okay. Okay. So you were waiting for the one thing to pop out and be able to be like, this is the sign, because this is the only thing I think I'm good at. But you were showing you were really good
Yeah,
at it.
yeah, yeah. Pretty much. I was waiting for the moment, and fortunately, it happened.
Awesome. That's great. I bet a lot of people feel that way. I certainly did. I never felt, even though I got good grades in school, like I was the smartest one, but music always came easy. So it's felt like the thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So fast forward, you're in it. And so as a saxophonist, that seems like a particularly risky thing to decide education or career as a performer, because, isn't education the safer route?
It is, and I do a lot of private teaching now, and I always urge students to go that safer route. But my parents never went to college. Nobody in my immediate family did, and there was no one to really say, "Wait a minute, you might want to reconsider this." Because not only am I a saxophone player, but I'm more of a classical saxophone player. So the avenues of performance are maybe optimistically 4 symphony gigs a year. They aren't many, but regardless, that's the path I ended up on, and I ended up at Bowling Green State University with just a fantastic world class professor named John Sampin, and
Yes.
in his world, he's a giant,
Yes.
and I learned an awful lot from him and from the studio. There were some incredible other players, and it opened up some doors. Um, After I was done there, I ended up down here in Columbus, Ohio, and just started teaching privately, one on one, and found that I'm good at that, and I like doing it. Um, Later on, a few years later on, I did put a homeschool band together that lasted until COVID. And I had a band that we might talk about here in a second called New Horizons, which is an international program that was started by Dr. Roy Ernst at the Eastman School of Music. And it's specifically for adults and older, and even much older adults. What he found is they are all capable of picking up a new instrument and doing extremely well, or going to the closet or the attic and getting that trumpet out that hasn't been played for 40 years. I saw that happen. I witnessed people 75, 80 years old who came to the first rehearsal, and they raised their hand, and I said, yeah, I don't know what any of these note names are, but when I see it, my finger goes where it's supposed to. So it was almost like magic.
Wow.
And then I continued to teach privately. And for those of you who don't know, Lisa has a wonderful band instrument repair program, and I've been participating in that for approximately a year and a half, 2 years, and I'm getting into repair, really enjoying it.
Can't say enough about that, just because it's going to turn our sector around, ladies and gentlemen. If there's anything that's going to fix it, it's more Wes Millers to help in communities that have incredible skills as a musician and incredible skills as a repair person, because they're going to get all those instruments out of the closet and getting played again and loved and appreciated by somebody who cares, which is really cool, Wes. I'm so happy to hear that.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Very, very exciting. But tell me for a second. So I wish that schools, because so many people that wind up with master's degrees in performance, whether it be clarinet, flute, saxophone, whatever, don't take the education route because they don't want to be a band director. And yet there are such a need for private lessons. And so many of those people that have advanced degrees wind up teaching privately as a core bulk of their income. And it's fascinating to me because there isn't a program for that, nor are there programs for what we're trying to do, or retail, trying to help people find other outlets in the industry to be able to participate and still show off all of their incredible skill. And so you, besides this private lesson thing, tell me a little bit more about, because you obviously have a passion for teaching if you got involved in New Horizons as well. And I did not know that story about it being birthed from Eastman. That is a really cool story. I would love to know anything more about that. But tell me how you wound up in that situation, and tell our audience more about that experience.
Well, at one point in the late 1990s, I think it was 98 or 99, I and a business partner founded a retail store, music retail, and we had about 12 teachers. We had a repair. We worked up to 3 repair technicians, and I was looking for ways to create another income stream for the business. And I had done some reading somewhere about New Horizons and Dr. Ernst. I think he's professor emeritus of education at the Eastman School of Music. He may still be alive. I'm thinking Florida, maybe Jupiter, Florida, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
You could probably find him online. He's an awful nice fellow. But I lost my train of thought as I'm so apt to do.
Explaining the background of the program for New Horizons, and then you're right to tell us about how you got involved.
That's how all these lessons go. I go off on a tangent. The kid looks at me and brings me back. So thank you. Yeah. So I was looking to create a new revenue stream, and the first time I tried it, I had 3 people, two retired. One was a music school teacher. Elementary music. And the other, I can't remember what she did. And then there was another fella who was retired, and we met for a few weeks, and things just sort of drifted like that for about a year. And then all of a sudden, all of these other people heard about it and wanted to join.
So literally you started a New Horizons group with like 3 or 4 people that just like getting together and were like didn't even know how to play anymore, or were just coming back to it. Is that true?
Yes. The biggest problem that I faced, and I never would have guessed this, was fear. It was dealing with people that wanted to be in the band, but were afraid. They were afraid to show up and be embarrassed. It was exactly like seeing a 5th grader who wants to join band and their parent has to just say, look, you need to get in there. So while I couldn't say that to these 70-year-olds, I just, in many cases, waited. And some of those folks took a year. They would call and just say, hey, it's still happening. And eventually one day they worked up the courage. So no one should have any fear about starting an instrument. I guess you should ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen? Is there going to be some sort of trombone incident where the trombone crashes? No, you will miss a note that you will hear. You will squawk on your clarinet as a beginner. You need to embrace it, but just do it.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for? It's pretty simple.
Fascinating. Well, I've always said that age defies music. It's really progressional age, like where you are in your development, right?
Absolutely. You know, you might be a baseball star for a while, but eventually those skills are going to go away, and you just end up watching. But uh, if you want to keep playing your trumpet until you're 90, well, you might be able to do that, and you might be able to do really well. And you know, Lisa, I'm sure you're aware, there are all sorts of studies that have been done, MRI scans, of how learning an instrument literally creates new neurons. That frustration that you feel causes the brain to adapt. So it's valuable to us.
And the other piece of that, which I preach all the time, so you're preaching my love language for sure, is that besides it making you smarter, it also is a wonderful way to get out all of your aggression, all of your pain, everything that's bothering you without having to say a word. If you're someone who's shy and doesn't want to tell other people how you feel, well, you can blast that through your saxophone or blast it through your clarinet, and you can
Right.
feel better.
Yeah. There's definitely an emotional aspect to this, and anybody who's taught privately with kids and adults knows that a lot of the lesson can sometimes end up as almost a counseling session. Um, Not where I'm dispensing medical advice, but just listening.
Right. And the best part of it is when we can take that energy and put it into the horn because it somehow makes it more peace filled.
Yes, it can be a big release. It helps people relax. If you're happy, it can make you happier. If you're unhappy or sad, you can play, and it's amazing the change that will happen.
Hmm. And
Absolutely.
we really undervalue as a society what sometimes the most simple acts that involve our participation, because in this case, we're not talking, we are doing, but we're not trying to prove something through communication. In that way, it's through a nonverbal form of communication, but it's something that can be easily expressed and something that we can also participate and observe at the same time. So it's kind of an interesting opportunity, really.
Absolutely. It just takes the willingness to, you know, to get an instrument, um, and to just start.
Yeah. And what's great about having more repair is that when you dig that instrument out of your closet and you're like, okay, what do I do with this? Does it even work? Because it does matter that it works. Your experience will phenomenally improve, even if you just spend a little tiny bit of sum of money to get it to work a little better. So you start to understand what's holding you back. That will be of great value to you.
Absolutely. There are lots of older instruments. Um, I have a couple of little trumpet students. They're on cornets, and the instruments are probably 80 years old. Their parents put $50 into them, and they may not look pretty, but they work just as well as they did when they were brand new.
Yeah.
So it can be done very affordably.
Yeah, absolutely. And so are you still doing that New Horizons thing or what? How, it grew to how big? Tell us how that story went.
The New Horizons, I think I did that for approximately 15 years here in Central Ohio. Um,
Did someone take
it,
it over? Is it still running?
no, COVID
Ah,
took it down. And what had happened was I found that 16, 17 people, no more than 20 worked well for me and for everyone else. And we would choose, we were almost a reading group. We did do performances, but I had hundreds of band charts, arrangements, and we would sight read a lot. And occasionally like I said, we would do a concert, but um, we were doing well until 2020, and we saw what was happening. And I remember we were rehearsing in a really large room, well ventilated. I don't know how many square feet it was, maybe a thousand. So we weren't too worried about spreading a virus. And we decided, okay, well, yeah, we can spread out. We can have people 10 feet apart. We can keep meeting. Well, the very next day, the governor of Ohio said, okay, we're gonna shut everything down. So it 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 put us down for the rest of the year. And when I tried to restart it, as with so many other things and people at that time, people's habits had changed. And I think a reboot could have worked, but I moved on to other things, and so did those folks. So COVID did us all a lot of damage.
Well, that's the thing, is that just like you had one pivotal event that got you to have a lifetime of experience of music making that really made it for you, it only takes one thing, like, to knock the whole thing down. And that's another thing I've learned from doing this podcast. So many stories of people who got derailed because of one thing that could have been fixed either if they had the awareness or there had been some other kind of cooperation. But just amazing how life is so fluid in ways that it's so fragile and fluid. It's fascinating actually to see how things land.
It is. I hope someone at some point starts a group like that back up, but it takes a kind of an unusual person to do that. Most of the people that are qualified to do that are sitting in band classes during the day. They're teaching in high schools. It takes someone who is self-employed and probably doing private lessons, something like that, where those things, they complement one another. You get people who are in a classroom setting with you doing band, and then they want lessons. Well, they like you, so they want to do lessons with you. But maybe someone will start one. I don't know. And who knows, maybe in a year I'll redo it. I just don't know yet.
Wes, is it a way for a musician to see it as just another pocket of income? Is there income that comes from it, or is it something you just do out of the kindness of your heart? How does that work?
Well, anything's possible. I had to use it as another income stream, and no one was going to get rich, but it was enough to certainly make it worth my while each year, and it was enjoyable, and we hit on a price point that worked for everyone, and no one was unhappy about that. It allowed me to buy new music and occasionally to pay rent for a space.
Yeah. So if somebody was listening to this podcast that was in a totally different city and was like, oh, I never thought of that as an income stream, would you be willing to, for even maybe for a charge, would you be willing to help them figure out what they need to do to set up a New Horizons group in their community?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I haven't looked at the information in a while, but there was a central New Horizons headquarters, and they used to have a lot of material to help folks. I don't know where that stands, but yeah, I'd be happy to talk to somebody about that.
Awesome, because I do think that there could be more of them. I didn't know its origin, but I'm familiar with the concept, and I know that they are sprinkled around, but I don't think they're everywhere. I think that it's still something that has to be discovered by communities.
That's true. They're international.
Oh.
Ernst had this notion in the early 90s that someone who was 98 years old could probably still play an instrument. And what we take for granted now, but what he discovered was you could hand an instrument to someone that had played through high school at least, and then walked away from it, and decades later that muscle memory is still there.
Yes.
So you just have to wake it up and knock the rust off, essentially.
Right. Well, that's what's fascinating about people being nervous about coming back to it, because I have helped a lot of people too come back to it, actually with even more scary things, because they're going to buy an instrument coming back to it. Like, I've had to sell sometimes, not had to, but people wanted to spend a fair amount of money, but they were really afraid because they didn't know what they were doing. And I wasn't pushing, but they wanted to. So it was always an interesting kind of juxtaposition, because it's like, wait, you don't have to do this, but I want to, but I'm afraid,
Right.
And interestingly enough, when you get them started and you help them pull it together, it is shocking how they're like, oh my God, I had no idea that I still would remember where my fingers go. I would still remember, now that you corrected me once, how to blow or what to do. And so it's really fun getting to see it just kind of light back up. And it does come back very quickly, actually.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, I saw some folks that one gentleman in particular, I believe he was Bill. Bill was his name. I believe when Bill started, he was about 75, and he hadn't played in many decades. And we were all amazed after 2 months. He's not going to hit Carnegie Hall, but that's not the point. And who wants that stress? But he was 70% back to where he had been 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was just amazing.
Enough so he could participate and that he could enjoy it and that he could feel like he was doing something fun with other people he knew. And it's a great activity, and you don't have to be amazing at it to get a lot from it. So there's no doubt about that. That is just the coolest idea. Can you imagine a world full of senior citizens playing band instruments?
Absolutely. It would make people a lot happier and probably solve a lot of problems.
I couldn't agree more. As a non-political person, the best form of politics I can think of is play a wind instrument. It's not political, good for your health, good for your family, good for your community. It's like just good for you.
Absolutely. We would have, I've done hundreds and hundreds of rehearsals there. We never talked politics. There was none of that. There was the social element. A lot of times these folks would just show up with cupcakes and things, and we would have them after rehearsal. A lot of friendships were made in those groups. We would play in nursing homes. My mother ended up in a nursing home, and we probably played in her nursing home 4 or 5 times. It's just a lot of fun, and the residents get a big kick out of it, and so do the performers.
Mm-hmm. So do you think because you were a classically trained saxophonist that was a performance minded, that in any way obstructed your ability to connect to community, or did it enhance it because there were only 4 orchestra jobs you could get a year?
I think it might have enhanced it because it sort of, by the nature of being self-employed and having to create performance and income opportunities, it sort of pushed me in other directions. Instead of, being in a high school waiting for the next group to come in as 9th graders from middle school, I had to get a little more creative with how I did things. I put a saxophone choir together years ago, and had that for a few years. And then, of course, my homeschool band. Those are things that wouldn't have happened if ironically, if I had gotten an education degree, because I wouldn't have had the free time to do that.
Mm. And where in your classical training or in your family background, because you said early on that nobody went to college, and yet that seems like a pretty intelligent move from the perspective of you had the ingenuity and the creativity to find a pathway that would work for you. And coming from a family that didn't have such a strong education background, where does that come from a classically trained route? Or does it? Where did you get that from, Wes?
Where did I get the idea to switch to?
The ingenuity and the creativity, because I'm not saying you're not a smart guy, but your background doesn't lend itself to saying that naturally you would be, outsmarting the general population about how to do something, because the saxophone is a very particular, difficult pathway. And being a musician in classical saxophone, of all things, is a very, very narrow. It makes a blue collar club actually look more viable because there's really nothing there. That's a really pathway. And so how did you get that kind of ingenuity? That's just so amazing to me that you were able to think out of the box like that.
There were 2 people. One, my father actually was self-employed. He owned a bulldozer and some heavy equipment, so he had to get creative in terms of digging up jobs, as it were, down in central Kentucky. And then once I was older and had moved to Columbus, I ran into another guy who's no longer with us, but he was just a fantastic woodwind player, and his jazz piano playing was world class. And he had taught a number of professionals here. And Jim had a very logical, clear head, and he told me what to do. And I did it, putting together opportunities and creating things that people might want to join. I guess you could say I tried to attach myself to people that knew how to do these things and learn from them, and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, just a couple of people can make a huge difference in terms of figuring out your career in music. So if you're somebody listening thinking, should I do this or not as a profession? Here is a great story to figure out how you can spend a lifetime in music and love it and be doing innovative new things all the time with the people that you're working with, which is very, very cool, Wes.
That is true.
If someone was listening to the story and just really impressed with your just how you got where you are, what would you say to them to get them to pick a wind instrument to play right now, to give it a try?
Well, you wanna pick an instrument, number one, that you maybe have played before and you're coming back to it. You want, if that's not the case, then you want to listen to a lot of instruments, go to a lot of concerts, try a lot of different instruments. All the music retailers are really happy to have people try out their instruments. Sometimes that's called a fitting, and you just decide which one you like. It's really pretty. It's like buying a car. What color do I like? What will this car do? Um, and once you settle on an instrument, you get it. And there are a lot of private teachers across the country, and you need to find one, especially for an adult that's used to working with adults. Um, because you know, there are days that maybe you didn't practice, and the last thing you need is someone smacking your hands because you missed a week. Well, go on in, go do it, and get back on track, and you just keep doing it. It's the process of learning an instrument that's enjoyable. Don't go in and think, I'm going to start here, and when I get here, that's it. I'm happy. I'm done. No, because once you get here, you're going to see that you need to go over there. So embrace the process, and just never stop. There is no end.
That's right. There is no end. Thank you, Wes Miller, for your time today.
You're welcome.